Well, welcome back. Welcome back to Divas, Diamonds, and Dollars podcast, where we empower career women, business owners, and other late bloomers with the tools and strategies for living a bolder, fuller life. Each week, we talk business, leadership, and personal finance, not just to survive, but to thrive. People, we are your hosts, Larisa Troche, and
Cecilia Benford.
well, Happy New Year, gentle listener.
Yes, yes.
So we have tucked away another year for the history books, and we are off and running into the new year ahead with our usual big plans for big results, because that's how we roll. And are you ready to jump right in? So I don't know if you happened to catch it when we did our upcoming, what's coming new for the new season, but we added a couple of new features, one of which is chunking your year. So if you recall, we began season 5 encouraging you to break your annual goals up into quarters to help you reduce your overwhelm and, frankly, actually end up getting more done because you're not feeling so maxed out. Well, this year, we hope you embrace that concept because in season 6, we're going one step further and encourage you to tackle big chunks of your year each quarter. And you know, chunk is Larissa's favorite acronym. These are the big moves that will really make your year and set you up for long-term growth. And that is what we are talking about, dear listener. Life is short, so let's make it count. I know how short it was because I just finished my vacation and it flew by. Short. Anywho, so before we jump into today's episode, what we want to do is give you your first success multiplier, your chunk for this quarter. So at the beginning of each quarter, you will get a chunk, a list of tips, right, to multiply your success. Although the letters will stand for the same thing, the tips each quarter will be different for that particular category. All that said, let's let her rip. So, chunk, community building. So, what you want to do is find the influencers in your industry, your niche. What are you working on? And more specifically, their followers. So, whoever you happen to follow online, kind of wiggle yourself on down into the comments and respond to the followers' comments on topics that are relevant to your brand, which helps you build audience as a thought leader. So influencer, audience comments, responses. And you know, you're not going to do all the things unless you're taking care of your health is your next chunk. Mm-hmm. Health moves. Take 30 minutes a day. You got to do it. Isn't your life worth 30 minutes? So whichever area you need to work on, for example, yoga or Tai Chi for mobility and anti-aging. We concentrate on strength training and cardio, but if you're stiff, that will slow you down. So get either yoga or Tai Chi to get you more fluid.
That's right.
Strength training if you need to boost your metabolism, perhaps, or maybe looking at meditation for stress relief, ever important, and improved blood pressure. That's a twofer. Now, you is the easy one. That is to uplift others. That is what we're here for, making big impact. So mentor a new hire or subordinate who is on their own growth journey, seeking growth opportunities. You have a role in helping them be successful also. Now, niche nurturing, that was not supposed to be a tongue twister. Who knew? But look, you need to build your tribe, and building a tribe, you need to stay in touch with them. Do you have any freemiums or downloads you want to provide? How are you going to stay in touch and stay top of mind? So I'm suggesting for this month, let's look at creating, maybe you pencil out your freemiums for the whole year. You don't have to do them all at once, but just get them on paper and do them as quarterly, for example. Kaizen, always my favorite, continuous improvement, if you remember what that stands for. Learn the principles of investing to get better results in your 401k, if you have one, or your retirement planning. You need to be financially savvy to make better financial decisions. So that is your first quarter's chunk. And to that, you add that to Success your way. What is a specific goal you have decided on for this quarter or goals? So apply the above boosters that I just gave you. They will be in the description, so that will help you boost this quarter's main goal. So that, my darlings, is your first chunk for the new year. How about that?
All right.
And if you forget, you can bookmark this episode, or we already told you, hit the replay button on your listening device. And stay tuned, if you will, for another chunk next quarter. Hey,
All right. And we are off and running with your kickoff chunk laid out. So today's conversation invites you to think about a broader view, a world view with a cosmopolitan outlook. So we're kicking off our January theme. One world, one love. How do we get there? One world, one love. I pause there because I'm thinking about I think some of us have heard the melody and know what island that came from or the singer. And so it just struck me. It's how a small place in the Caribbean came up with that melody for the world. That's why I paused. And so, how do we get there? Well, we're starting with a big necessary question. How do we actually create equity, not just talk about it? Before we dive in, we want to ground today's conversation in something very real. Are you ready for, numbers always kind of grab your attention. Between February and April of 2025, more than 300,000 Black women lost their jobs or exited the labor force at a time when the overall economy was still adding jobs. That tells us something important. This wasn't random and it wasn't inevitable. And I've actually heard an updated number since that time, but we won't go there. That's not the focus or the point. But really, as they say, let that, resonate with you. So it happened alongside federal workforce reductions, budget cuts, and the dismantling or rebranding of DEI efforts across government, corporations, and universities. Just last week, I was reading in our paper, we have a lot of universities in my surrounding area, and it talked about what the impact was on the universities. And so I don't believe you have to, I don't know where you'd have to be that you would be unaware of this, okay? And so when you think about it, whether you work in business, education, healthcare, or public service, these shifts do affect all of us. So today's conversation isn't just about politics, it's about people. And I think, again, let that resonate with you, particularly for our theme of one world, one love. We're talking about people, okay? And so it's about people, it's about systems, because, somebody's got to be a bean counter in some form or fashion, right? To improve things, we need our systems to keep us straight, processes, all things we have talked about before, and of course, will again in the future. And certainly, last but not least, it's about leaders and individuals. What can they do right now to build equity into everyday life? All right. So you leaders out there and individuals, because there's a fallacy of, oh, I'm just waiting on the boss or let the leader tell us what to do. Nope, everybody's a player. All right. So I'm sure before this story is done, Larissa or I will have something to share along that line. So what do you have to say about this
well,
equity equation?
I thought, first of all, you said that most people, you didn't say it, but let me paraphrase. People would have to be living under a rock not to know about these 300,000 Black women losing their job. But I'm not sure it got an appropriate level of coverage.
Right. And I don't think I was so. let me clarify because I wasn't talking about the 300,000
Okay.
per se,
Oh,
just simply the impact that DEI
okay.
rollback has made
Okay.
in general. Yes. Okay.
Okay. All
That
right.
everybody, that all the things that are affected. Yeah, not, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right about that number not
Coverage.
being
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was like, this should be a much bigger headline.
right.
But again, so how do we get there, right? So let's go ahead and maybe define what is the equity equation. We're calling today's episode Deciphering the Equity Equation because equity isn't just a single initiative or department. That's part of the problem, I suppose. It can have
Mhm.
many definitions. It definitely has many steps and many levels, degrees, right? So it's the outcome, if you will, of multiple inputs working together or failing to work together.
Mhm.
That's kind of the bigger issue. Frankly, equity lives at the intersection of leadership behavior. And we have a lot to say about leadership because, when you have good leaders, it really stands out. When you
Yes.
have leaders who are not quite as good, oh my goodness, that is felt
Mhm.
across everywhere. So, equity lives at the intersection of leadership behavior, community strength, and community, frankly, has a lot of different definitions. But again, so community strength and individual agency. My whole, I don't want to use the word frustration, that doesn't sound good. I am just keenly aware of how some people are less than proactive about stepping up, standing up, speaking up. We're waiting for someone else to decide. And I'm suggesting,
Mhm. Mhm.
uh-uh.
Mhm.
Anyway, right? So those three areas. And when one of those three areas breaks down, then the whole equation becomes unstable. So today we want to focus on three levers that do move the needle, regardless of policy shifts or economic cycles. We're talking sustainability.
Mhm.
So we want to lay out three things, three areas, three levers for individual agency, right? Your role in making a difference.
All right. So, I mean, at the top of the equation, always leadership. Well, what kind of leadership? There's all kind of leadership. There's actually good and bad leadership, right?
Uh-huh,
So,
uh-huh, uh.
the first lever that we're going to talk about that we firmly know to be the right thing is servant leadership. That is one thing that I have taught to, people, the supervisors that I had, and that they should go forth and do the same thing. And even today, as you lead other people, that's the type of leadership that you should have. So this idea isn't new, but it certainly is so relevant today. So relevant today. And it is leading with people, right? It's not about towering over them and browbeating them and being some of those other things that we see. It means that you're measuring success not only by outcomes, but by who grows and who is protected and who is empowered along the way. I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with that picture. Why shouldn't that be for everybody? Okay, I mean, it's going to look different, but everybody empowered, right? Everybody protected, everybody grows in different ways, but that's what we're talking about. And so, in moments of uncertainty, such as layoffs, DEI rollbacks, budget cuts, servant leaders are going to ask different questions. First and foremost, who is the most impacted by this decision? You just cannot be a servant leader and not think about that. Secondly, who loses access or opportunity if we do nothing? That's important. One thing that I don't hear very much today, but I know internally is it should be a feeling, I think, sort of like, the golden, what you were taught as a kid, but, walk a mile in somebody else's shoes or treat others as you want to be treated. But granted, we're talking about leadership. However, there has to be some empathy in there. There has to be some integrity for these things to work, right? How can I use my position to reduce harm rather than simply managing the optics? Well, unfortunately, we live in a world where it's all about the optics. And unfortunately, a lot of those optics aren't good. And it's almost like that doesn't matter. But people are managing by the optics. Oh, how much noise can I raise? Oh, how much can I get people to look at me? Managing
Or
optics. Mhm.
distract from them looking over there.
Oh, well, and there is that in spades, as they would say. So, servant leadership shows up in mentoring. It shows up in sponsorships. I love the thought of this, mentoring and in sponsorship. It shows up in who you advocate for when they're not sitting at the table. Just because they're not at the table doesn't mean they're not important. And so, servant leadership, hopefully by now you can gather that it's not limited to executives by any means. You can practice it as a manager, a team lead, a business owner, or even a peer. So, with that, Larisa, how would you, what do you want to tell us about that?
Well, I just want to add one thing, and I think you're holding back. You probably have many things to add, but I wanted to mention that it's also about modeling values. And because people watch what leaders do, not just what they post or put on
Or what
the
they say, even, right?
right. And yeah, I just said post, but
Well,
any company commentary, right? So it's not just that. I I guess my point, quote unquote, true story, right? We recently held our first leadership, which was what was that? I initiated it because I'm just not a fan of operating by the seat of my pants. I'm a planner. And
mhm,
introducing this whole concept of planning is how we get in front of things and we do better and we don't have to spend the year just being reactive. So I propose that we have hold a leadership retreat, which we did. I'm going to call it successful, although it wasn't perfect, but it was the first one and it was well received. And the point of it, there were many points. Like I said, it was a planning retreat, but in terms of leadership, we have, I guess we'll call them middle. We have supervisors who
mhm,
are focused on the task. And that's great. We do need to get all the things done, but we need to develop and manage our staff performance. And so I wanted to introduce this concept of leadership in your day-to-day role, because people get busy and they kind of lose track. But if you're managing other, well, even whether you're managing anyone or not, you, first of all, you have to lead yourself. You have to manage yourself. So whether you have someone, a subordinates under you or not, it's not always the same thing. Um, so anyway, I don't want to digress, but in terms of servant leadership, it's about leading and developing your staff. And you have to consider the people element, which may be poor grammar, but not just processes and systems. There are
right.
people
That's
behind
where
it.
my empathy and integrity come from, that those
Right.
values, those have to show up.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure we just would you once upon a time, you don't say this as often as you used to, but I just wanted to foot stomp that for just a moment.
Right.
Um, and I'll just go ahead and introduce our second lever, which would be uh, building community. We talk about that a lot because it's just so critical and you don't realize how important it is. And I don't want to say until it's too late, but sometimes you don't realize the importance till you're neck deep into whatever you've been up to. So the second lever in the equity equation is building community because when systems weaken, communities are those lifelines that we reach out to and we fall back on. And, you know, we've seen this time and time again when institutional support disappears, and that's happening a lot these days, gentle listener. Uh, you know, people turn to their networks, they turn to relationships. I cannot tell you how critical relationships are. You know, all the things we learn when we get older. I'm trying to give y'all the inside scoop now. You might not be the same age, but when you've been around the track a few more times, you're going to know all these things. So just take my word for it. Take my word for it. People turn to networks, relationships, and shared knowledge to survive and rebuild. Think about when communities come together after big disasters or using
Mhm.
technology such as the ice locator app. I was so like, oh my gosh, you people rock for thinking of this. So of course, you know, people had to get that shut down, but I thought it was a great tool and a great resource because we're looking out for each other.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to emphasize, right? One world, one love. We must look after each other. So community creates information flow, critical for those decision makings, for being proactive instead of reactive. Emotional resilience, it helps us rebuild and bounce back. Economic opportunity, we you know what? It takes a village, right? So they're creating opportunity for others. And it matters how those communities are built. So consider equitable communities share resources, not just inspiration. We're not just talking about it, we got the things behind it.
Right.
We create visibility for underrepresented voices. I am always for the underdog trying to help and support. Behind
Mhm.
the scenes or up front, I'm going to bring you up along with. Uh, it offers access, not gatekeeping. We're inviting in, not keeping out. Now, this could look like, for example, professional groups that actively circulate opportunities. The best jobs are found through networking, not on some job board.
Mhm.
Mentorship circles that normalize sharing knowledge. Don't hold all that intel to yourself, share it with the greater good. Business communities that collaborate instead of compete. I'm here to tell you there's enough for everybody. It's not
Mhm.
like me and no one else, it's we. And let's be clear, community is not just a nice to have. Please don't let that be misunderstood. Community is a strategic asset. And I just want you to learn that before, I don't want to say before it's too late, because it's never too late to, to be what you might
Mhm.
have been. But if you learn it early on and work toward community, you're ahead of the game and you're much more supported and thriving. So, especially if you will, for women navigating volatile labor markets, why are women's labor markets always so volatile? Why are people trying to hold us back? Community is often the difference between stagnation, no bueno, and
Mhm.
momentum. Muy bien. Okay. So that's what we want. We want to get ahead. We want to grow and become. My dear.
Okay. Yeah, it's a lot to chew on. It's a lot to reflect on. But more importantly, it's a lot that you can act on. That's what we're here for. So, our third pillar, agency and skill building. So, we haven't talked much about agency before. It's a little easier for me because I grew up in my work experience was focused on agencies, all, knowing the different levels of agencies, hence relationships, hence how can we work together, hence who's the leader and how are they leading their people, and you have agency. And so all of the people that come together to impact agency. All right. So we're talking about at this third level, we still are trying to spend real time on, you think about what the two things we've already talked about, but incorporate, this list, agency and skill building in what happens when you put these together. The hard truth is equity initiatives disappear. Individuals are often told to be resilient without being given tools to do so. Now, I got to make this foray into this, what we're talking about. A lot of things, that's what I see today. That's what we're reading about. When you pull the rug out from under people, when you just dismantle agencies without looking at all the decades of work that has knit them together, when you have not even looked at maybe you might want to just modify, but just to say, oh, we're going to undo, we're just going to change, we're just going to not do, wrong answer. Um, the federal government is a good candidate for many things, always has been. Yeah, agencies disappear, but they didn't just disappear for the sake of disappearance. That's not how that works. And so one of the outcomes is people, two things, databases are impacted, databases are, where's the information? People who don't understand make these changes. And so we lose information. People start just kind of making up stuff, talking about things they don't understand. And oh, by the way, the few people who are left behind, if they're so lucky or want to be in that situation, they're like, where are my tools? What am I supposed to do? Which way do you want me to go? Where are you working with a group of people to still continue to see that they grow, continue to see that they're able to help, the community, still able to get whatever processes and products that need to be accomplished? So the agency, as I've told you about all the dismantle part of things and the impacts, what are agencies? Agencies mean that you have transferable skills. We always want transferable skills. For me, I'm a product of learning early at learning at the things I could, be a sponge, learn everything I could, that I could go to another agency and transfer skills and gain new ones. After a period of time, grow, learn, go to another agency, transfer, build upon, grow skills. And so the accomplishment ends up a, for me, I knew what my value was. I knew the clear value of having learned who the people were, what the processes were, what it took when you put those together to accomplish certain outcomes. And oh, by the way, what can we change? What can we build a bigger, better? What innovations can come out of this? So it led me to want to be at the leading edge of something new. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about agency and how you can build upon those things. And then finally, I like the word options. I today tell people, in spite of some of the things that they run into, I say, you have options. When they say, oh, have hope, I'm also a great person, of hope. But, it can't be nebulous. It can't be gray, right? Hope without a strategy is not much of getting things done, right? So I tell people I'm a firm believer you have options. And so everything Larisa and I have talked about for these six, now going into our sixth period, our sixth, what do we call these?
Season.
Seasons. I knew that wasn't the right word. I use seasons so much, I somehow didn't want to use it for some reason, but seasons. That's what we're talking about. And so what we're seeing in the labor market right now is this. The women who are most insulated from disruptions are those who can combine technological fluency as well as human-centered skills. Those are two things that they're not going away. They can't go away, right? They just can't go away given where the world is today, how we perform, what our needs are, and even with all the technological changes, whether it's a robot or who's the AI or who's the bot, um, you still need some human transferable skills to interact, to, maintain, to, like I say, innovate and understand how all those things work. So, not necessarily coders. We have coders, but right now, there's sort of, mixed feelings about do we need coders or not? And can't we get that in other ways, right? But we do need women who can work with technology. So I've sort of already highlighted that, but also who can translate insights into action. Now, I kind of, that's one of my favorite uh, hiring. What I want to say. What Sometimes you can't put that into words, but as they say, you know it when you see it, like some of the questions you ask people. What are the things that they do, not necessarily in what this job description says, but what do they bring to the table with what they like to do, and how do they, accomplish getting that done? Translating insights into action or, critical skills thinking, right? When we talk about our thought people, thought people can do that, right? That's what we need today, and women who can do that are able to be successful with that. Communicating across functions, I said that, but my really one of my successful, what do they call it?
Emotional
Emotional
intelligence. Uh-huh.
intelligence was this very thing. And so it is what gives you that gold star with relationship building relationships, because that's where you get information. That's how you get things accomplished, right? And then finally, adapt quickly. Adapt quickly. People don't have time for you to be, kind of wondering and stewing and trying to put forth anything perfect. They want quick. And so if you're a person that stands back in the wings and you gotta, suck air all the time, nope, you gotta adapt quickly. And that'll usually show up pretty early, right? So agency also means owning your professional story. It's sort of sad when you're in a big group of people and you're doing planning for who are the next people to be trained or get promoted. You want to be one of those where your story is one of professionalism and people know what you do, who you are because of your getting things done, how you get things done. That's how sometimes people don't understand that. They're looking at their technical skills. I went to school for this and I know how to do this and do that. But if a lot of times that's not necessarily who gets promoted. Okay. And so building a portfolio of outcomes, not just roles. I think I've talked about around that and in various ways. Um, so then my last comment about that is got to stay visible, even when hiring slows. Figure out a way to put your name out there to let people know, yep, I'm still alive and I'm doing something. And this is what I've accomplished. So stay visible. All right. So then here's my last comment about agency. This is when you put this all together where multipreneurship, how you can accomplish multipreneurship. It's continuous learning and financial confidence that become acts of equity, because you're not just looking inwardly to yourself, but it's also outwardly to all the people who, make things happen, who you can have on your team, who you can go to and get information from, the whole learning aspect, right? And finally, it's not just personal ambition. I think people are starting to learn that now. That's something that, the old saying, grow where you're planted. And with that, there's a lot to all the things Larisa and I are offering. So I think I'll leave it at that.
So we've covered our three pillars or three levers that you can draw on, right, to take your role, if you will, in the equity equation. And obviously, when you're moving forward, you obviously want to learn the lessons from what has come before. So a couple of lessons from 2025. What do the 20 last year's job losses teach us? First of all, equity protections cannot be assumed. I mean, I think we are just so painfully aware. Assume
Hmm.
nothing,
Hmm.
right? Secondly, waiting for the systems to catch up is risky. Life happens. You just cannot wait. You need to be proactive in creating your own agency, your own opportunities. And then, frankly, third lesson is women who invest in skills, we discussed, networks, critical, and ownership have more control over their futures. I mean, we have talked about that from day one on this podcast.
Hmm. Hmm.
Day one. So, this doesn't mean abandoning collective action. We work with, not in silos, right? It means strengthening both the systems and the individual. And so when we say one world, one love, we're not just talking platitudes, it's more than that. We're talking about leading with responsibility, building community with intention, and developing agency with strategy. Gotta have a plan. Equity happens when people refuse to ignore harm. Don't turn a blind eye, folks. Share access, not just advice. Don't just preach about it. Help the others come with. When you're on that elevator to success, reach back, hold the door for those coming behind you. And prepare themselves to weather change without losing their humanity. Being aware of change and trauma and critical events, we're all human behind it, through it, with it. So we have to look at how we bounce back, how do we adjust, how do we thrive, not just survive. So you cannot lose your humanity through it all. So I know this was a deep topic for kicking off the new year, but it's so important, and it is. I think it's part of our everyday life, so it might as well be part of our everyday conversation. So we wanted to cosmopolitan outlook is one of the key pillars or principles of multipreneurship, and that's why we want to kick off this particular year with it. And I do talk about that in my upcoming book, Gentle Persons, which you can pre-order. But anyway, so that is why we started off this year's conversation with this important topic, because there's a lot happening out there in that big wide world of wonder or horror, depending on your viewpoint. But anyhow, let me leave you with our Divalicious pro tip before we wrap up. Equity isn't created by good intentions alone. It is built through leadership, community, and personal agency practiced daily. Hi.
And with that, you have an action item. If you're serious, if you have big plans, if you are already chomping at the bit, you will take an action. You choose one lever to strengthen. Lead more intentionally. Lead more intentionally. Build or deepen one community connection. Or invest in one skill that increases your agency. Those are hard and fast, nothing nebulous about any of that, right? So you can get your mind wrapped around one of those. And if you are doing so well and you want to do two or three, okay, fine. But at a minimum, take one step forward. So small moves consistently applied do in fact change equations.
Okay, so we're wrapping up this episode, but if you, again, harken back to what we promised you in the new year, we are also going to provide you with a power prompt that will help you supercharge, if you will, your action item. Now, it is our proprietary prompt strategy. Diamonds is our proprietary diamond prompt strategy. So I'm going to break that down for you and how you can apply that to your action item. And depending on how long you've been with ChatGPT, that's my current favorite. The exact words may vary, but the best results follow from a particular or a specific prompt format, which includes context, audience, and output, among others. So for today's episode's action item, choose your role in the greater conversation. Pick one of the three levers we covered and let AI help you flesh out your next steps. So diamonds, details, information, audience, mindset, other resources, niche, and deliverable. So the details, what is it you want chat to do for you? In terms of creating a more equitable world, I want to do my part by strengthening, enter the action item you chose, my strengthening how to lead more intentionally, for example, whichever one of those three you choose. And the information is your contextual backstory. So sweeping administrative changes resulted in over 300,000 Black women leaving the workforce in a 3-month period due to federal workforce reductions, budget cuts, and dismantling or rebranding of DEI efforts across government corporations or universities. These shifts impact all of us. So that's the backstory that you're telling GPT and how to formulate its response. The audience or purpose, who is this, as you're working on this action item, who is this going to be for? Are you sharing this information with others, or is this an internal process that you just want to strengthen your skills and abilities, or maybe you have to work with your downline? So let chat know who this resource will be for. Now, the mindset, you can either have AI, for example, act as a DEI expert, or you can state your particular expertise, how this is relevant to your lever, your industry and position. So either your current position or aspiration, where are you trying to grow into? How do you want to be perceived as a result of the action you take? That is your mindset that you're providing to GPT. And now other resources. You may or may not need this, but if you have any specific articles, videos, or other reference sources that you want AI to research for, for the answer, or just want AI to provide the resources it used, because one of the complaints was sometimes they hallucinate. So now they are citing their reference source so that you know it's valid information. So that's also important. So make sure you include that in the prompt if that's something that's is important. Then of course your niche. What is it that you do? What's your secret sauce? So you want to make sure the answer that you get relates to the work that you do. And then lastly, your deliverable. Not lastly, almost lastly, is diamonds. Specify whether you want just a quick one sheet of bullet points to get your juices flowing, or maybe you want an actual checklist. Hey, on day 1, do this, on day 2, do that, whatever. How detailed do you want the output to be? And then, frankly, S is your satisfaction level. You know, you get a lot of good work from GPT. That is my second brain. But maybe you want it to dig a little deeper. So review the output and refine as necessary. Help AI tweak the output for tone. Does it sound like you? Is it in your words? Or have it ask you clarifying questions. This is a super tool that people don't normally use. They just say, hey, do this thing, and it'll do the thing. But sometimes if it's, again, depending on how long you have been working with GPT, it doesn't have any context, doesn't have your history. Say, hey, ask me 3 to 5 clarifying questions so you better understand what I want you to do. That is so fascinating when you have it ask the questions, because you're like, oh, yeah, I should have told you that. And then bada bing, bada boom, and you tell it that, and you get such a, it is such having that two-way dialogue before you get the thing that you're asking for. It's fascinating how much more improved the output is. So, you know, just keep doing those steps, that last one, satisfaction, until you are happy with the results. So that is your diamonds power prompt format that you can apply, first of all, to the action item or to anything that you are doing for better results. So,
Wow. So how is that for a first week of the year? Wow. Let's go, ladies and gentlemen. And so next week, we'll continue the conversation by looking at how individuals and leaders can create equity even when systems resist it. Make sure, please, that you're subscribed. And if you're subscribed, get into a regular habit of checking out the episode. We would really love it. And certainly, if this episode resonated with you, or even if you just know somebody else who could greatly use it, please share the episode. And with that, we're going to say ciao. Thank you.
see you next time. It has been a blast. Happy New Year.